Hey, what's going on everybody? Today I'll be showing you how to install Black Forest Industries engine mount, transmission mount, and lower torque mount on my Mk6 Volkswagen GTI. This is a 2013 with a CCTA TSI engine. It also has a manual transmission. This will work for a DSG transmission as well. So when you buy the full kit, you get the engine mount, transmission mount, and lower torque mount. It comes with this brace that goes underneath the torque mount. Also comes with the bolts for the engine side and the transmission side. As always, I try to use the least amount of tools possible because I know not everybody has everything. So I'm just going to run through them real quick. So the first thing is a long 1/2 inch ratchet, a long 3/8 ratchet, a long 1/4 inch ratchet, and a stubby 1/4 inch ratchet. I've got two extensions here. One is a 3/8 extension. It's about 6 inches long. A 1/4 inch extension about 4 inches long. 10mm wrench. All of these black sockets right here are 3/8 drive. They are 6-point sockets. I have a, what is that, 15, 16, 18, 19, and 21. This one right here is a 1/2 inch drive socket. It is a 22. These are all 1/4 inch right here. This is going to be a 13. This is a 10mm. This is a T25. And this is a 5mm Allen. I've got some specialty pliers right here for the hose clamp on the back of the air intake. You can use any kind of pliers, they'll work fine. I've got a rubber dead blow mallet. I've got a specialty clip puller for the wiring harness. And then I have two pry bars, one small and one larger. I also used a little bit of marine grease. You'll need a floor jack with a piece of wood and two jack stands. I only have one right now, but today I'll be using a lift. I'm kind of spoiled, but you will need two of those jack stands. Please hit that subscribe button. So what you'd want to do is jack up the front of the vehicle and place the floor jack right there where I have that arm. Same thing on the driver's side. So you want to take your T25 and you want to remove the lower engine shield. And then take your pocket screwdriver and pop it loose right there and lower it down. I think the better route is to probably start with the passenger side. It's the easier one to get to, so we're going to start with that one. Remove the 10mm bolt on the washer neck. Unclip the connector for the coolant reservoir. Lift the wiring harness out of the coolant reservoir. That way we can access that bolt and that bolt. So the first one's pretty easy to get to. So you're going to remove that fully. And then this one I go in front of the engine harness and then I remove that one. So now we're going to lift up the coolant reservoir. So to do that, we pull the engine harness up and around, just like that. And then it can be a little tricky, but you just got to maneuver it and then just kind of lay it over here. You can also take a small bungee cord from right here and maybe attach it to the wiper blade arm, and it'll just hold it up out of your way. So now we're going to remove this black bracket right here, and holding it in is two 13mm bolts. So I've got my long 1/4 inch ratchet here with about a 4 inch extension and a 13mm socket. So we're going to go ahead and loosen these. And then we're going to remove that bracket. And what I'll do is I'll just lay it right there on the firewall in the same orientation it came out. That way when I'm going back in, I just don't get confused. Go ahead and take the floor jack with your piece of wood and place it underneath the passenger side of the oil pan. And you're just going to apply light pressure just to hold it up because you are taking the engine mount out. So now I'll just lay my coolant reservoir back in place. That way I can get the two bolts right here on top of this bracket. Now normally when I remove the engine mount and I put the same engine mount back in for any given repair, I use the witness marks of where the bolts were at to put them back in the exact same spot. But in this case, I'm using a new engine mount, obviously, and you don't want the engine to be too close to the body of the car right here. So what I did is I just found a random object that fits perfectly in between the body and the bolt on that bracket right there. So this can be any household object. You just need to make sure that you have the same depth when you go back in with the new mount. Okay, so I've got my long 3/8 ratchet with about a 6-inch extension and a size 18mm socket. So you just kind of have to work around the hoses right there. You can go in front or behind, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of hard to do on camera right now, but you're just going to get to that bolt, you're going to loosen it, and then the same thing on the front one, you're just going to get to that bolt and loosen it. And then once you've got them loose, go ahead and take them both all the way out. And then the jack underneath the car is going to be holding the engine up. Go ahead and bungee your coolant reservoir back up here. Now we're going to remove this front bolt and this back bolt right here. I'm going to use the same setup I used for these two bolts over here. The only difference is this is a 16mm socket. So go ahead and loosen the front one and then loosen the back one. And then take those all the way out. And just for reference, in case you ever put this engine mount back in, the one with the stud on top goes in the front. So I'll go ahead and loosen this clamp right here, just because the hose was getting in my way. And I'll just kind of move this hose up out of the way. And then I should be able to wiggle it up out of there. Just like that. So just looking at the factory engine mount, you can see that there's a lot of play in this. This one's actually still good, but you know, you can move it. This Black Force Industries one, I cannot move this whatsoever. So before I put the new one in, I'll just kind of wipe away any dust that's on here. That just gives it a good mating surface. Same thing right here. So go ahead and take your new mount. It actually goes in much easier because it's a slimmer design. Just feed it in there. You're just going to kind of set it up like that. You're going to look at this hole and then the one on the back and just try to get them lined up. You might have to maneuver the hoses right here just so you can get them in place. Hey.
Sorry if it's all stuck together. They've melted a couple times in my car.
What kind are these?
Cookie and cream.
Ooh. Ooh. Thank you. So looking at the bolts that came out of the car and then the bolts that they gave you, the two larger ones with the washers, replaced the big bolts. And then they kind of tricked you right here. They gave you a tapered bolt and you would think it would replace the tapered bolt right here, but it doesn't. I went to go put these in and I found the length on this one is too short to replace the bolt in the front. So this short one right here actually goes in the back and this long one goes in the front. And the reason the shorter bolt was not long enough is because there's a raised section right here. And if we look on the back right here, there's not a raised section. So go ahead and put the shorter bolt in the back and the longer bolt in the front. So I've got my tapered bolt right here and that one's going in the front. So go ahead and work that all the way down by hand. And leave it just a little bit loose. And then we're going to take our shorter one and put that in the back. And then I'll just try to center up that taper right there and then tighten it down by hand again. Make sure that's centered. And then I'll go ahead and tighten both of those down. Now both of these new bolts are no longer 16s, they're now 15 millimeters. So go ahead and tighten both of those down. On my channel, I do not give torque specs, so that is up to you. Now I have not moved the floor jack at all, so you can see that the bracket is actually a little bit lower than the engine mount. That kind of gives you an idea of how much the factory engine mount was worn and sagging. So what you would do at this point is you would just jack it up a little bit till it barely mates with the new engine mount, and then you're going to feed the bolts in by hand. So right now I'm jacking the engine up, just very slightly. And then it mates up with it. Go ahead and lay your coolant reservoir back down. That way we can gain access to these holes again. And if we look, it's not perfectly lined up. So what I'm gonna have to do is just grab a hold of the engine. It's gonna be pretty hard on camera, but you know, you can just kind of grab right here. It doesn't take a whole lot, and you just wiggle, and you'll see that I can get it lined up. So I'm gonna pull with my right hand, just kind of towards the front of the car, and then I'm going to feed in with my left hand the bolt. So go ahead and take both of the bolts with the washers and put those in. So I snugged both of those bolts up, but I did not tighten them all the way. What I did before that is I took my measuring device and I made sure that it was still within spec. So it's perfect, it's just like it was before. So once I figured that was good, I went ahead and tightened those down. Those are no longer 18 millimeters, they're now 19 millimeters. Now if you run into the scenario where it is too close to the body, what you'd have to do is take something like a long pry bar, maybe get a second person to help you, and you would just apply pressure between the body and the engine, and then you'll get the bolts lined up where you want, snug them down, and then recheck. So go ahead and put that clamp back on that hose. And I know it's kind of repetitive, but go ahead and bungee this back up again. And then we're going to take our black bracket in the same orientation. And then you're going to line it up with the holes and put the bolts in. And then go ahead and tighten those all the way down. For the last time, go ahead and undo this and lay your coolant reservoir down. Feed the wiring harness over the connections. And then you're going to line up that hole and that hole. Go ahead and take your two screws and put them in those holes and tighten them down. You want to be very careful. You don't want to drop these because they are a headache to get out of there. Go ahead and put the wiring harness back in its place. Snap those in. Take your connector, snap that back in. And then you're going to line up your washer reservoir. And you're going to put that 10 millimeter bolt back in. And then go ahead and tighten that down. And that's it. We're done with the passenger side. So what I'll do now is I'll lower the jack, and then I'll slide it over to the driver's side and reposition it so that it'll hold it up for the transmission mount. Now that we're all finished up with the passenger side, I'm going to move on to the driver's side. Go ahead and take your battery cover off. Just lift this tab and pull it off. Now I have an aftermarket cold air intake system, and it's essentially the same process. You're just going to take this 5 millimeter Allen bolt out, release this connector, take this clamp loose. You're just going to take some pliers and loosen this clamp right here. And then there's also going to be a little cap. You pop this cap off, and then there's going to be a couple tabs right here. You release the tabs, and then you're just going to feed the whole box out and around this coolant line right here. So go ahead and disconnect your connector. Next, we're going to loosen this back clamp right here. I have a special set of pliers that I'm going to use, but you can use any normal set of pliers will work. So I've got my small 1/4 inch ratchet with about a 4-inch extension and a 5mm Allen. So you're just gonna go ahead and loosen this bolt right here. Now it's basically the same procedure. You just grab this and lift it up, and then you're gonna lift up like this and kind of work it at an angle like that to get around this hose. Next thing we wanna do is get this front shield for the battery out of the way. So what you do is you just take your pocket screwdriver, lift that tab, and then get that tab right there. And then there's gonna be these channels right here. And you're just gonna lift it up and out. So next we're gonna disconnect both cables for the battery. I've got my small 1/4 inch ratchet with a 10mm socket. You could also use a wrench. Always disconnect the negative first, so go ahead and loosen that. And then you might need a pry bar to help kind of wiggle the terminal off. You want to be careful though, because you don't want to break the battery casing. And as you can see, my battery has a little bit of corrosion on that terminal. All right, and then I just kind of fold it over here, just like that. Go ahead with the positive. And then I'll just kind of tuck it like that right underneath the coolant hose. Next we need to take the battery hold down bracket out, and that's a 13mm bolt. So I've got my 1/4 inch ratchet with a 13mm socket. So go ahead and loosen that and take that bolt all the way out. And then just take note of the bracket. The fingers are facing towards the engine. I've seen a lot of people put this on backwards, and that's not the right way to do it. They do it something like that. So it goes like that. All right, next we just remove the battery. Every battery is a little bit different. Mine has a handle. I'm just gonna kind of wiggle it and lift it up. Next thing we need to remove is this battery tray and then this cover. I find the easiest way to get this cover off is to actually loosen this so I can tilt it up, and then I can get to the tabs that are on the side and then loosen and remove that. So we're gonna go ahead and remove this bolt right here, this bolt, and that bolt. They're all 10mm, so I've got my 1/4 inch ratchet with about a 4-inch extension and my 10mm socket. So go ahead and loosen those and remove them. Now that the battery tray is loose, I can lift it up, and then I can get this tab right here on the side, lift that up, and then I can also get to this one right here, and then this just comes off. So I just go ahead and sit that right there or to the side. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab this positive cable again, just kind of hold on to it. And we need to work this corner right here up and out of the wiring harness. Just like that. So now that we've got the battery tray out of the way, we can actually see the transmission mount, but there's still a little bit of work that needs to be done. This wiring harness and the guide needs to be moved out of the way. Now at this point, it's good practice to take a bunch of pictures with your phone, because you want to know the exact orientation of the wires when you're going back together, because we are going to have to disconnect and move some of the wires to the side. So first thing, go ahead and lift this tab up right here and lift this door. So if we follow this positive cable right here there's going to be a clamp. There's also one right below it. So what I do is I just take my pocket screwdriver and pop it loose right here. Again, it's kind of hard to do on camera. All right, just like that. And then the bottom one, same thing. So now both of those doors are open. Once those doors are open, you can actually you can pull the positive cable out of there. It's kind of hard to do with one hand. All right, but now it's out. Looking at the back, there's going to be another door right here, so just go ahead and lift that up and open it. Now this is where you might need to get a little crafty. There's going to be clips right there holding the wiring harness into that tray, and I have a special tool that goes around that clip and wiggles it out pretty easily. But like I said, you might have to find something to kind of do this job for you, because you don't want to break these, because you want them to go back in and hold secure. So go ahead and take this front one out right here, just like that. And then looking just to the right of that one, there's another one right here. I've already popped it loose, but that's it right there. And then following back on that same wiring harness, if we come all the way back here under this last trap door, there's one right here. I've already popped it loose. It's really hard to see on camera. It's hard to do this on camera, but it's right there. Now we're gonna follow the wiring harness that has the brown ground right here, and we're gonna do the same thing. So there's gonna be one right here in the front. So I'm gonna get up underneath it and loosen that one. And then following that same harness all the way to the back, right before that trap door, you can see where there's a little bit of tape right here and right here. That's where the next one's at. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen that one. And then again, just go ahead and tuck your positive wire underneath this coolant line right here. And now that we have everything freed up, we can actually raise the harnesses out of that tray. So you just lift them up and over the doors and kind of set it to the right side. And as for the smaller wiring harness, same thing. Just lift it up. And you can just kind of set that one to the left side a little bit, just out of your way. And now that we have both harnesses out of the way, all we have left is this tray. Now this next part is probably the most difficult part of this job. I've seen a lot of people break these, but you got to be very careful. So if we go to the back of the tray, I've got a light on it right now. There's a one-way push clip that's built into the tray. So what you need to do is with your left hand, come from the back side, and literally you have to pinch it, or maybe use a flathead screwdriver, and you have to pinch them in this direction right here, and then they'll come through the hole. So, like that. So I've already loosened it before I even started this video because it's very difficult. But you're gonna squeeze right there. And once you get them squeezed enough, you can lift the tray up. And this is what the bottom of the tray looks like. So this is the clip that we're squeezing on. And then if we follow the tray all the way to the front, there's gonna be two more. So there's gonna be one right here and one right here. And these are pretty difficult to get to, but I found that the right one is a little bit easier to get to. So you can just kind of work one up at a time. All right, I just got that one. And then I need to work on this one right here. Once you get all three of these, that tray will come right out. Okay, so this left front corner is the most difficult one. And I found the easiest way was to get a pocket screwdriver and come right here and press on it and keep upward pressure on the tray, and then it popped out. So now that my tray is loose, I just go ahead and lift it up and work it out of there. Now you can see the transmission mount. At this point, I grabbed something of reference to measure the distance from the bracket to the body of the car. So I just found a socket that fits right down in there perfectly, and that'll be my reference to let me know if I have it too close to the side of the body. So at this point, I just reposition my floor jack underneath the transmission, and I'll put it to the farthest to the right that I can. And then I'm just gonna put a little bit of pressure just to support it. Next up, we're gonna loosen and remove these three bolts right here. They are 18 millimeters, so I've just got my same setup that I used on the passenger side. It's my long 3/8 ratchet with about a 6-inch extension, and an 18 millimeter socket. So go ahead and loosen these up. And when there's no more pressure on these bolts, you'll know that the floor jack is supporting the transmission. After that, you can just go ahead and remove all three bolts. Next, we're gonna remove these 4 bolts right here. They are 16 millimeters, so the same setup, just with a 16 millimeter socket. So go ahead and loosen these and remove them all the way. Once we have those bolts out, we can just go ahead and move this engine harness out of the way and then just lift it up and out. This is just a quick shot of them side by side. Looking at the bolts, we have these bolts that have a washer with them. Those replace the larger bolts, and then the smaller ones replace the smaller ones. Go ahead and wipe away any dust that might be on the mating surface. Go ahead and take the new mount and lay it in place. Take your 4 small bolts and feed those in by hand. And then go ahead and tighten those down. The smaller bolts are no longer a 16 millimeter, they're now a 15 millimeter. Next up, grab your 3 larger bolts. Go ahead and take one of them. And again, you might have to pull right here on the transmission just to get one of the holes lined up. So I'm gonna get one lined up and get it fed in by hand. I'll do the same thing and get another bolt in. Now, I was finding it extremely difficult to get that 3rd bolt in, so what I did is I grabbed a long pry bar and I just stuck it right here and put it on that bolt right there and just applied a little bit of pressure, and that'll line that hole up. So now I can get the bolt in. Also, what I'll do is I'll put that pry bar in the same spot and apply a little bit of pressure so that these bolts are centered on the bracket right here. Once they're centered, I snug them down. And before I tighten them down all the way, I take my reference tool, and it's the same, so that is good. Go ahead and tighten all 3 of those bolts all the way. Again, I don't put torque specs on my channel. And at this point, it's just reverse order. So we're gonna go ahead and take our tray, and we're just gonna feed it underneath the wiring harness, and we're gonna clip it back in. Just like that. Go ahead and feed the large wiring harness back around the doors. And then you're gonna line up the clips. So this back one right here, you're just gonna line it up and snap it in. And then the same thing with the front one. After we do the large wiring harness, we're gonna do the same thing with the small one. Just go ahead and put it back in its tunnel. Line up this back clip, clip it in. And then the same thing with the front one. Close this door right here, and this door. Go ahead and snap that small black wires clip back into the tunnel. And then you're gonna follow this positive right here. It's gonna be the black portion, and you're gonna put it back in its clips. So open up those doors. And then it's kind of got memory where it goes. So you're just gonna put it back where it was and then close those doors. Now we're gonna take our battery tray and we're gonna pay attention to this corner right here. We're gonna feed it underneath the positive red cable and behind this black cable right here. And then we might have to do a little bit of twisting to get it to fall. just like that. Now it's in place. So before I put these bolts back in, I'm going to take this right here, kind of lift up and snap it in place. So there's a snap right here, a snap in the back, and a snap on the side. And once those are in, I'll lay it down. I'll put my 10mm bolts in and tighten them down. So go ahead and take your battery and lay it down in the tray. And the positive goes towards the front, and then you're just going to lay it in there and slide it towards the back. Go ahead and take your battery hold down bracket with your 13mm bolt. Make sure the fingers are towards the engine. Lay it down like that, and then feed the bolt in. And tighten that all the way down. Go ahead and take your positive battery cable, and you're going to want to feed this red line over these little lips right here and put the terminal on. And I'm going to go ahead and take my 1/4" ratchet with a 10mm socket and tighten that down. Next, you want to do the same thing with your negative cable. Go ahead and lay it down on the terminal, get it down as far as you can, and then tighten that bolt up. Now we're going to take our front battery cover, and it's got these channels right here. These channels need to go down in these channels right here. So we're going to feed it along the sides, get them in the channels, and then we move to the front. We want to push these down in and lock them. Go ahead and lay your air box down in place. Remember to watch out for this coolant line. Once you're done, snap the front end and put the cover down right here. And then you're going to tighten down this 5mm Allen. Go ahead and connect this connector, put it in its little holder, put this hose on, make sure the lines are lined up, and then you're going to put this clamp back on. Take your battery cover, feed these in the back into these little inserts right here, and then you're going to snap it in the front. And then make sure that the outsides are on the outside of the battery covers. And that's it. We are officially done with the driver's side. Now we will go underneath the vehicle and we'll do the torque mount insert. So looking underneath the car, if we come right here, we look at the torque mount, and we're going to be taking out that bolt right there. That's a size 21mm. So I have it on my long bar. This bolt's going to be pretty tight, so you're going to need to break that free and then remove that bolt. So when you buy this kit, you will receive this plate, this bolt, and the mount itself. I've had a mount in the past that came with this bracket that says ECS tuning, so I'm going to reuse this one just because it's awesome and trash that one. The new bolt is a size 22, the old one's a 21. You can reuse the old one, but I'm going to reuse the new one. So before I install this insert, I want to lube it up with some marine grease. This is lithium based. You don't want to use anything that's petroleum based, anything like wheel bearing grease. You don't want to use that because that'll eat polyurethane up. All right, I've got it all lubed up. Basically what I did is I worked my way around this and around these. There's no need to lube the bottom up because that's not what's going to have a hard time going in. So if we look at the mount and then we look at this, you can kind of tell where it lines up. So the big portion is going to go towards the back and the two fingers are going to go towards the front. Now the next thing we need to do is push that up in there, and so to do that I have a dead blow rubber mallet, and I'm just going to use that to tap it up in there. And I just kind of work my way back and forth. And then you're going to go until it's all the way flush with the metal race around it. Now once you've got it in and it's flush, what you can do is you can take a mirror and reach above it and use a light, and you can just look down on it and see if the fingers went through correctly. The last step is to take your plate and feed the bolt through it. And what you're going to do is you're going to take this, feed it up in there, and tighten it down. What this plate's going to do is it's going to hold that insert in there. Once you tighten that bolt down, you are done with the lower torque mount insert. Go ahead and take your lower engine shield and snap it in. So we're looking right here and right here. And then you're going to put all these screws back in. You guys already know I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video. Please hit that subscribe button, like, comment, anything you guys want. I hope this helps somebody. I'll see you next time. Peace.